What's going on, Knicks fans? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Cap Rules Everything Around Me. Cream, get the money, dollar bills, y'all. My name is Jeremy Cohen, and it is good to be back. I missed this. I miss doing this. Tis the season. You know, the NBA season, it's over. It was a great Game 7 for those who watched. Congratulations to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Congratulations to former Nick Isaiah Hartenstein. You know, in the end, he made the right call. He took the money, won a championship, got great playing time. Not in New York, but there are other places than New York. New York or nowhere. He chose nowhere, and he chose well. So good for him. But, of course, a fascinating and disappointing end for the Pacers on what was a really fantastic playoff for them. I mean, just called the team of destiny, but of course came up short. If you're a Knicks fan, perhaps you were rooting for the Pacers because it meant, for whatever reason, that you lost to the team that won the championship. Or maybe your hatred of the Pacers persists in such a way that you were content or even happy with the Thunder winning the title. I, for one, was not disappointed to see the Pacers not add to their hardware. With that said, of course, much of the game was impacted by the loss of Tyrese Halliburton, who will be missing the entire next season, so it seems, due to a ruptured Achilles injury. And it's going to be a fascinating and downright, I don't even know what the adjective you would use for next year to describe the East. Competitive for the teams that are good, and kind of an ocean for those that are not contender status. I mean, it's the point where, you know, for whatever team comes out of the East, why even have an NBA season? I keep seeing asterisks for teams, and is this season, this champion, should they have an asterisk? And every season, every team that wins a title overcomes adversity. Other teams deal with it, and it happens. And why even play the game if we're going to assign asterisks to those teams? But that's what next year might look like. It will feature injuries in the East with Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton, Damian Lillard. That will, of course, impact how a team such as the New York Knicks will operate. It will impact the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Orlando Magic just made a giant trade for Desmond Bane. The Detroit Pistons, who rose to prominence after a terrible season prior to that. So I can already feel the sense of the NBA community at large finding ways to diminish a season that hasn't even occurred yet for whatever team comes out of the East. But that doesn't really matter, because what matters is how you deal with adversity and how you overcome it. And the Knicks, they had a lot of injury luck this year. You hope that it continues into next year. But the domino effects and how it impacts the Knicks are going to be something to note. For me, something that I thought of as I was watching this Pacers team right after the Halliburton injury, most thought about the game at hand. And why wouldn't you? It's the NBA Finals. And I sure did too. But I'll tell you, one of the first things that popped into my mind was, is Herb Simon, the owner of the Indiana Pacers, going to pay the luxury tax for the first time in 20 years with their best player sidelined for the entire season? Is he going to spend all that money to bring Miles Turner back? I mean, when Halliburton returns, the playoffs after that, he'd soonest be available, it seems. Pascal Siakam's going to be 33 years old. So the domino effect of how these injuries occur and what takes place and how the teams, when it comes to the finances, and we could talk about aprons as well, but how these teams are directly impacted is something that the Knicks will have to deal with, positively or negatively. Of course, when your competition gets weakened, it's an opportunity for you. But looking at this team, just this Pacers team, I wonder how long they stay together, how long they are the best version of themselves. We talk a lot about, for a team, they'll be back there. Perhaps the Pacers don't get back there. Perhaps this was their best opportunity, and injury and luck went the other way for them this time. Player like Miles Turner, like I mentioned, does he stay there? Does he go elsewhere? Does he stay, but then another player that's earning a larger salary gets shipped out as a result because Herb Simon doesn't want to pay that tax? Lingering questions. And the Thunder as well. I've seen a lot of takes about how the Thunder are, the apron's going to crush them. It's going to kill them. What if it doesn't? What if it doesn't? What if the way that the Thunder are structured with the level of picks and the power of friendship, so to speak, what's stopping Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from taking a contract lane similar to what Jalen Brunson did to keep the core around him? What if the players on that team that all seem to band together, what if each star takes some sort of sacrifice? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But the idea that we are saying, well, the Thunder will never be back here or enjoy the run while it lasts. Yes, anything can happen. With that said, if your best players cooperate and try to create what's a dynasty, which the NBA has, I wouldn't say they've tried to avoid, but the NBA wants players to stay in their markets. They love parity because it doesn't feel like the same product. But the Thunder are playing by the same rules that every other NBA team plays by. And the difference is that they did it without having to spend a significant amount. And maybe the spending changes how things work. But maybe it also doesn't. Maybe they find ways around it. Maybe players on the margins, good rotation players, when they age out, they're traded. And then you have the next man up who happens to be a first-round pick that the Thunder have taken from another team years ago. And it pays off years later. So when you look at those teams and you look at the Knicks, it's worth wondering, how do the Knicks capitalize? Do they capitalize? Will they stay lucky? Will things occur for them that we don't like? Of course, we saw the Knicks be severely plagued by injury in the 2023-24 season. They were a shell of themselves by the time that series ended in Game 7 to the Pacers. So when it comes to the NBA, you just simply never know when a team will get back there, how long they will remain on top, and what they can do to be the best version of themselves. So with that said, I'm excited to talk about the salary cap, of course. You can throw any of your questions at me. It doesn't have to just be salary cap related too. We can talk about all sorts of things. But with this season in the books, the draft is coming up. The draft will be on Thursday. It's very close from now. It's the fun thing about having a Game 7 where the draft, it's right there. It's this week, if you can believe it. And what I was looking at Tankathon today, and I couldn't believe that I think it was 16 of the final 17 picks in the first round of the NBA draft have been traded. The only one, the Boston Celtics, are the only team that has their draft pick. And that's got to be some insane trading that we just haven't seen before. I can't recall a time where a team or teams have traded that many picks that frequently. But with that said, I know we've got some exciting stuff so far. So let's get started with the questions. First off, Kamlau, thank you for the Super Chat contribution. We need a Nembhard. Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Davion Mitchell are hard to trade for since they are expiring and we can't take sign and trades. How about Scottie Pippen Jr.? Scottie Pippen Jr. plays for the Memphis Grizzlies, first and foremost. Curious as to what his role is moving forward. I know that the Grizzlies head coach loves pick and roll. Don't think Pippen Jr. was used frequently in that way. As for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Davion Mitchell, for Alexander Walker, yes, he is a free agent. Mitchell might be as well. I'm blanking on his exact contractual situation. But for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, yeah, he can't be acquired via sign and trade. So if you are the Knicks and you are looking for a point of attack type player who can guard twos and threes, you're not going to be able to get him via sign and trade. And the reason for that being, it's just too tough. It's too tough to do that with the first apron. Any sign and trade of a player coming in, hard caps you at the first apron. Yes, so Davion Mitchell's a restricted free agent. So the only way the Knicks would be able to sign him is using the taxpayer mid-level exception. The thing you also have to keep in mind if you're looking for defenders, yes, you absolutely want good defenders on the wing. Where you have to be careful is, can they shoot? If they can't give you shooting, are you looking at a Josh Hart situation? But worse, because then you swing in the opposite direction where you're closing out on, or opponents are not closing out on shooters who simply can't shoot, or players who just aren't able to do that at a high level. You want guys who can keep defenses honest. And they don't have to be players who can only thrive on assisted opportunities, but it's nice when they have a little bit more wiggle to them. Just having them spotting up it can work, but a little bit more than that helps too if they're able to finish at the rim, whatever they're able to do. And as opposed to, or in this case with Pippen Jr., small contract, so the Knicks would have to send something out, might be able to do it as part of a sign and trade, theoretically, of course, where if you were to trade Cameron Payne to the Grizzlies, that would give you enough money going out where you could get a player like Pippen Jr. coming in. With that said, I don't know if Pippen Jr. is quite in that vein of that archetype. I do agree that would be a fantastic player to have. Some sort of 2-3 if the Knicks can find a suitable starting caliber type, but you got to give to get, and you're not going to find a starting caliber with the minimum exception or the taxpayer mid-level exception. So then if you're not doing that, you have to trade a player. If you're not trading a player, then there's the thought of promoting Deuce McBride. If the Knicks as a front office or whoever their head coach is doesn't believe that Deuce McBride is best suited in a starting role, but instead in a reserve role, then we're right back to where we started, which is if you're the Knicks, how are you getting this player? So that is something worth noting, because if we're looking, and this is where the Dante DiVincenzo trade impacts the Knicks, finding that type of player, not the easiest. There are other players, as we've talked about, who can fit into this mold. They don't have to be exactly like DiVincenzo. They can do a little bit more off the ball than on ball. They can add more defensively than perhaps DiVincenzo might have. There are players out there who make sense. This is also why when the Knicks tried to go after Alex Caruso last season, number one, the salary that it really would have had to be would have been Mitchell Robinson's. And number two, how you can see that the Knicks still probably feel be great if we had a guard who can do a lot on defense and spot up nicely. The Knicks still don't quite have that. Very curious to see how they try to get that this offseason. If I were Leon Rose, that's something I would be focusing on, but it depends on the market, depends on the assets that you have available to you. So I probably wouldn't go after Pippen Jr. just because I don't think he fits quite in that vein of more off-ball guard who can do more. Would rather see someone who's more starting caliber, but I do understand the Deuce portion of that. So I kind of indifferent on it, but I appreciate the suggestion and the super chat contribution nonetheless. Thank you very much. Next from TJ2K. I would love Lonzo. Defense, handling, playmaker, yes or no? Let's talk about Lonzo Ball. So the idea of Lonzo Ball, totally agree with you, TJ2K. I think he makes a tremendous amount of sense. He's not going to be your lead guard, but he can facilitate. He's a great passer, does well on transition, hits an open shot. First question I'm asking, do the Bulls want to trade him? They could have moved him at the deadline. There's something to be said where you could get him for a higher price tag now if you're Chicago because you've extended him versus having him be an expiring player. That's number one. Number two, of course, comes down to if you're the Knicks, how much can you trust Lonzo Ball to stay healthy? You would hope that with a training staff or an athletic staff that has kept players really healthy, won an award for their contributions, that's something they can do. The problem with Lonzo is, again, the health. Played 35 games this past season, right? 35 out of 82. Before that, missed an entire season. Before that, missed an entire season. Before that, played 35 out of 82 games. Before that, played 55 out of 72. 63 out of 72 before that. 47 out of 82 before that. 52 out of 82 prior to that. So he has one season where rough math tells us he's played over, I think, 70% of games. Two. 55 divided by 72, according to Google, is 76%. But this is a player where you really cannot rely on him to stay healthy. And when he's healthy, excellent contribution. Absolutely. No doubt about it. The defense is there. Everything that I just mentioned, those are positive attributes, but it's the health. If you were to trade a player or trade for a player that you feel can't be healthy at what will be 28 years old, it's tough. Then, of course, the question is salary. Who's going out? Is there a way for the Knicks to cobble enough salary to get to $10 million of fake money? And by fake money, I'm talking about, a Precious sign and trade and a Cameron Payne sign and trade and draft filler. Yes, absolutely. But if you're Chicago, why are you doing that? What does that really benefit for you? Are you trying to win games? Because the Bulls never seem to pick a direction that's good enough. They aren't bad enough to truly be bad, and they aren't good enough to actually achieve something in the playoffs. So they're kind of stuck at a fork in the road. To me, for Lonzo, trading him, they could try to be bad. Absolutely. But I think they can get a better haul even with the injury concerns. But if you're the Knicks, is that a chance you're willing to take? I think that if Lonzo were the only player on the market, then yeah, he makes a lot of sense for why the Knicks would want to move him. But we're probably not looking at fake salary and a fake first-round pick from the Wizards and maybe a pick swap. We're probably looking more at Mitchell Robinson because of how the math works. The Knicks right now don't have a lot of salaries that make sense for Lonzo, not named Mitchell Robinson. So if that's the case, yes, could you get the Bulls to add Javon Carter to Lonzo and trade Josh Hart? Sure. But at that point, I keep kind of thinking, what are we achieving? Yes, you're adding more spacing. You're maybe adding more passing there too, or playmaking. But if you're losing Josh Hart for that, what happens when Josh Hart, who we know can stay healthy, is traded for salary filler in Carter and a player in Lonzo who consistently misses time? So if this were, say, Lonzo Ball, taxpayer mid-level exception signing because he's a free agent, absolutely. I am very interested. That would be a great addition. But we're at a point where there's more of an opportunity cost than I'm comfortable with because of what it would mean. I don't think it's a bad option, but there's inherent risk. And if he's missing time, it's a problem. So I get it. I lean no. I understand the yes. I wouldn't say yes. I'd probably be like 70-30 no. I don't think that 30 is going to increase, but I don't absolutely hate it. So I appreciate the question because he probably will be a target for some fans, and I can understand why for the reasons you mentioned. So thank you, TJ2K, for the contribution. Jared Barton, thank you as well for the super chat. Nothing I look forward to more than this show. Thank you, Jared. That means a lot. How likely do you think it is that Mikal Bridges is moved this summer? Probably not super likely. I would gather, unless, and we'll talk a little bit more about this on the next podcast, unless you can aim for the stars with a Jaren Jackson Jr. type, because there really aren't other windows to trade for Jackson based on how the Knicks operate, based on how his contract is. If I'm the Grizzlies, I treat him like an elite player. So if I wanted to move him, number one, I could probably get a better deal, but there are add-ons. It'd have to be more convoluted than that. But number two, when it comes to Mikal Bridges as well, or rather with Jaren Jackson Jr., because the salaries do line up there very nicely. With Jackson, there are really two avenues if you're the Knicks that you can try to get him. Number one is right now. Right now, you've got a year of team control for each player. Makes sense why you would do that. Or if that doesn't happen, which let's face it, it probably won't, but it could, sure. The second would be the trade deadline. Once you get past the trade deadline, it becomes really hard for the Knicks to do anything with Jaren Jackson Jr. because then Jaren Jackson Jr. can't be traded next summer in a sign and trade because then the Knicks would have to offload money, but they'd have a ton of money on the books and a sign and trade with a hard cap at the first apron, as we mentioned. It's just too convoluted. If I'm the Knicks, there aren't really many players I'm trading Bridges for. I'm not trading Bridges for depth pieces. That doesn't really help me. I think there are ways to get Bridges going more than what we saw last season, especially in the pick and roll, not having him be that spot up shooter. We know he can hit corner threes, but finding ways for him to cook perhaps with the bench. The bench ranked 30th in points per game. If you can get Mikal Bridges to see time with the bench where he is doing more, right? The patterns I imagine will be different. But if the Knicks were to have Tyler Kolek or another point guard who finds players in the corners, but Tyler Kolek, you maybe don't want him to be relied upon to do a lot of the playmaking, having someone else who's not Jalen Brunson to be able to run plays alongside him, other guys who can do something with the ball, creating looks, movement, cutting, open shooting, getting Bridges in the corner, that sort of thing. That helps you. It opens up so much. So I just don't see a lot of options for where Bridges would go or why he would be moved. We saw the Desmond Bane trade. Though they aren't similar players, they aren't on similar contracts. One is twice as long in Bane as the as Bridges' contract was when he was acquired. Different money, different salary versus picks versus players going out, all sorts of things. So if you're looking at it that way, what could the Knicks get for a year of Mikal Bridges? It's going to be less, unless you package him and other things to move up in some way. And again, not impossible. The money can work for certain things, but improbable seems like the way to put it. More improbable. The only name that I would imagine makes sense is Jackson. And again, if he were to be dealt, I think there are other teams that can outbid, but we'll get more into that as well. But Jared, thank you for the compliment. Really appreciate it and appreciate the contribution as well. Kevin Danishevsky. Hey, Kevin, thank you very much. Raptors may trade Emmanuel Quickley. Jalen Brunson, Emmanuel Quickley had great net ratings. Is there a world where you see the Knicks buying low on Quick and making tandem work with a new coach? So Kevin has been in the DMs fighting for his life to try to reunite so many former Knicks with this current Knicks team. And I applaud the commitment, Kevin. I really do. I understand why, when you see players working with these Knicks, why you go back to it. As for Emmanuel Quickley, the first thing that I would start with is, of course, the money. So what does it mean to say to buy low on Emmanuel Quickley? Well, Emmanuel Quickley is earning $32.5 million next season. So that's quite a bit of money to add up to getting Quickley back onto the Knicks. How are we doing that? You're not going to be moving OG Anunoby in this case. So it's Josh Hart or it's Mikal Bridges. And if it's one of them, then you're adding most likely Mitchell Robinson's salary. And at a certain point, you get to, okay, yes, they did have good net ratings together. There are also other players that can have good net ratings with Jalen Brunson who do not feature you to have to trade all these core pieces out or multiple core pieces out to bring back Quickley. I wish there were a way that the Knicks could have kept him, but that was the cost of doing business to getting OG Anunoby. So I just don't see a world where the Knicks go back to Masai Ujiri, who, if he's buying low, or if he's selling low rather, it's probably because he's buying low on a player that's better than Emmanuel Quickley is. The Raptors have draft picks. They can use salary to upgrade. Of course, the Raptors put themselves in a bit of a corner they bought low on Brandon Ingram, which I understand, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Ingram in general. They have RJ Barrett. They have Scotty Barnes. They have Pirtle. There's an awkward fit there. I'm not sure what Masai is cooking, but when it comes to the Knicks, the money makes it feel like a stretch. I just think you can get a lot of what Quickly possesses in a cheaper form, more in the aggregate. Maybe you're going to get two players who earn a combined less than Quickly, neither of whom adds exactly what Quickly can give you, but where you're satisfied because you're able to spread that out. The Knicks don't want to be too top heavy when it comes to contracts, and getting someone like Quickly is something that I worry they become too top heavy with their deals. You have a lot of guys earning a good amount of money, and then you have very few earning salaries that you feel comfortable with or that are even smaller than that. So I wouldn't put my money on it. Kevin, I wouldn't put your money on it, and I wouldn't put the money that you have given me on it. And I appreciate you for doing that. So thank you very much for the question. And thank you, as always, for your support, buddy. Jason M., thank you for the super chat. Fans need to realize Knicks can't trade for players making over $6 million without giving up one of the 7 rotation players. Got to make smart signings. You're right. I agree with you, Jason. I agree. There is a way for the Knicks to get more. They can get someone for more than $6 million. The way being they would get Precious Achiuwa's money, and they could, if they traded him for some team as part of a sign and trade, just to make the math work, and adding another salary, whether it's another sign and trade or another player on the roster who isn't within the top 7. But I agree. Overall, it's not really can't. It's that it's just unlikely. It's going to be difficult for the Knicks to get talent. If we as a society are under the implicit agreement that the Knicks don't have a lot of assets to give up, and that they also want to bring talent in the door, that it stands to reason, as Jason's saying, that in order to get someone really good who's earning more than $6 million, let's face it, the overwhelming majority of players in this league who are really good are earning over $6 million. And if they aren't, they are probably on their rookie contract, or they are in such a steal of a contract that they're really not available. Although there's one player in mind that could be maybe a second. We'll get into him later. Maybe. But that's the thing. It's, to Jason's point, you have to trade talent to get talent. And if you want to get talent, then you're probably dealing someone from the top 7. And if you're not trading Cat for another star, if you're not trading OG or Bridges or Hart to get you better talent, I don't even need to mention, but I will, Jalen Brunson, not going anywhere. Mitchell Robinson, that's a salary. Fans don't often want to trade him, and I get it because he's good. Deuce McBride making under $6 million himself, so you'd have to package to then get someone over the $6 million threshold. So yes, it's going to be very tricky for the Knicks to be able to get good talent on the trade market without giving up one of their top 7. It's not impossible. It's just highly unlikely. So I'm with you on that front, Jason. I appreciate you mentioning that because it's going to be tough. The Wizards' first-round pick, which is truly 2 high second-round picks, because the Wizards are not going to put themselves in a position where they are going to give up a great first-round pick to the Knicks next year. That's not going to be enough on its own with expendable sign and trade cap salary to get someone so good that the Knicks are able to then keep their whole top 7. I would be absolutely shocked to see it. So thank you for bringing that up. Kevin Danishevsky once again, 3-team deal. Okay. Knicks get Emmanuel Quickly, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Conchar. The Grizzlies get RJ Barrett, Pirtle, 4 Raptors picks, Knicks picks, which would really just be the Wizards pick in this case, and swaps. The Raptors get Cole Anthony, Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns, post August 15th. All right. First of all, we're assuming that the Grizzlies are fully tearing it down in this case and are trying to tank. And that is a choice. I don't quite know why. Because if I'm the Grizzlies, I'm still kind of going for it. Like, I understand they're in this middle ground. If I were them, I would still try to elevate their team. They have plenty of picks. They have good salary. They've got Jaren Jackson Jr., who can, finish second in Defensive Player of the Year award. I wouldn't necessarily go for the jugular of let's just tear it down. But in this case, Kevin is saying that. From the Raptors' point of view, actually, before I get to that, the Grizzlies are creating something that the idea of seeing Pirtle and Barrett share the floor for longer periods of time, for Raptors fans, I'm sure was something that they didn't want. So Grizzlies fans, that's going to be tough. And now it feels like you've got too much talent in Pirtle, and you've also got Zach Edey, who I know will be missing a little bit of the season, it seems, but you're committing to 48 minutes of rim protection with no spacing. And you've also got Barrett being high usage and presumably Ja Morant, but now you have to figure out how to trade Ja. It's just being candid. It's a mess in Memphis. You got a lot to sort out. I'd say there's no shooting on the team, but you got Ja there. So maybe that's the best way that they can do it. I don't know. But from the Raptors' perspective, they're changing the dynamic of their entire team. Now they're getting Karl Anthony Towns. The reason Kevin has August 15th, of course, is because the Grizzlies cannot aggregate Cole Anthony with the trade that they had. So they have to wait 60 days in order to do that, to make the math work. Again, I look at the Knicks and it's like it's weird because they get better and worse at the same time, in my opinion, which you could say, and I'm sure Kevin would feel like, well, number one, I feel they are getting better. And number two, doesn't that mean it's a fair trade? And I don't really think it does, because you're trading all NBA talent away. And I recognize Jaren Jackson Jr., very strong player there. I don't love the fit for really any of these teams. It just feels like you're moving players who don't. I'll put it this way. This feels like a trade where it were made by a Knicks fan. And I don't mean that as a slight. I just mean that as I see it, where this feels like something where this could theoretically work for the Knicks and the other teams figure it out. But we get to say, yeah, look, they get Bridges and they get Cat as well, because Cole Anthony is now running point in Toronto, which I think is a bad idea. I don't think he's a starting caliber point guard. You've traded Emmanuel Quickley away. Now you're running the offense through Bridges, Ingram, Barnes, Cat. I don't like that very much defensively. I feel like it's just a lot of scorers, but not guys who really complement each other. So for the Knicks, it again, I'm sorry, but it feels like a trade created by a Knicks fan to try to feel like we can get the rest of the pieces to work. It'll fit. I promise it'll fit. And Kevin, I just don't think it does. I don't see why it works for the other two teams. And I just don't think they trade Cat for Jaren Jackson Jr. and Emmanuel Quickley, with Bridges also going out. It's a no for me. I understand it would be a yes for you, but I appreciate you presenting it as such. Jason, thank you again for the super chat. MLE is vital. Need Nuggets Bruce Brown production. Yeah, my hot take is that the Knicks, and maybe this shouldn't be a hot take, the Knicks don't need to use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception if they have access to it and they plan on being under the second apron and they have space to use the whole thing. Great, do it. No problem there. But yes, it's not a necessity. It's a nice to have. The Knicks can find ways to get around it. Again, there are candidates. You don't even have to use the full taxpayer mid-level exception. You don't have to use all of it. You can use a portion of it. You could give it to a veteran who's who would be earning the minimum, but then give them a little bit more. So, for example, if you were to get a veteran in the door and their cap hit is going to be around $2.3 million, but because of how many years they've accrued, let's say they've played 10 years in the NBA, their cash would be a little over $3 some odd million. So they're making $1 million more than the cap and the books indicate. Cash and cap are not the same thing. So if you're the Knicks, you could say, hey, to this player, you're going to get $3 million in cash, or 3 some odd million, if you were to sign with us. That's a minimum. That doesn't hard cap us at the second apron. But we actually have the room, and we're not going to go above the second apron anyway. So we could give you $4 million, and we could use the taxpayer mid-level exception. It's more money for you. We're not going over the second apron anyway. We have enough room where it works. Wins all around. Let's do it. So that's where it could benefit you. But based on how few teams, I understand that the CBA has been a big factor with the aprons. Based on how few teams have used the second apron, the taxpayer mid-level exception over the last couple of years, it tells me that it's one of two things. Number one, it's a resource that is being underused and teams should be using more of it. Or number two, the value, the difference between what you're getting and a minimum signing, and the fact that it hard caps you the second apron, it might not be that significant. It might not be. And like I said, I hope that if the Knicks have access to it, use it or lose it, might as well use it. But I don't know if it's going to propel them in a way that a lot of folks might think that the non-taxpayer, and Jason, I know you don't think this way, but for those who think, oh, well, it's not the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, but you can get really strong talent. The best case scenario is usually that you get a rotation player that wins you games every now and then. It's usually not something that is a real asset, because the players that are signing are probably in their late 20s, early 30s. They've gone past their peak. For some, it could be a make good. You could kind of say, hey, I had a down year. I could use this as an opportunity to springboard myself and do something. But for most, it's kind of just the final frontier before you get into the veteran minimum status. So yeah, I'd love to use it if it's available, but I don't see it as a need in the way that some others might. Jared Barton, thank you again. Over or under 0.5 new players in starting lineup? I'm going to say over. The safe bet of why I'm going to say over is because Josh Hart would go to the bench. But there's also the possibility the Knicks trade for a player, and that player is starting caliber and fits in seamlessly with what the Knicks do. And it's not Deuce McBride in this case. And they're able to do something there. So I think you could look at it as an internal or external, but I'm going to take the over on 0.5 with the starting lineup, especially because when a new coach comes in, they typically want to feel like their impact is made right away. And they don't want to rest on the decisions made by the previous administration, the previous coach. So I could see a coach coming in there just off the bat and saying, yeah, I'd at least like to tinker at first. We've seen all of these minutes with the starting five. There are probably more play actions that we can do and that I want to accomplish, but I also want to see different personnel and mix and match there. So I'm definitely going to hit the over on that. Darren Hood. Hey, Jeremy. I have a question. What do you think the Knicks should do in the draft, and what's the team's overall need? It's a great question, Darren. I appreciate it. I am a terrible person to address draft questions. I do not follow it. I don't claim to follow it. I will never claim to follow it. But since you asked, I will give you as honest of an answer as I possibly can. So the Knicks don't have a first-round pick. I don't expect them to go into the first round of this draft. If they did that, it's more money. They're getting close to the second apron as is. So yes, they could find themselves in a similar Pacome Dadier situation where I think he earned $1.8 million this past season. but also you could just use the second round and the rookie exception to your advantage. Now, what I'll say is I'd keep my eyes, and none of this is sourced, this is purely speculating. I'd keep my eyes peeled if the Knicks were to find an avenue to trade up on the Oklahoma City Thunder. The reason being, the Thunder, who just won an NBA title, of course, they have 15 players under contract next season. Folks, there are only 15 players on the roster. So the Thunder could easily do a draft and stash with the 15th pick, but they also have the 24th pick. And on top of that, they also have what I believe is, the 44th pick. So if I'm Oklahoma City, I don't need 3 firsts. I have a good team. Chemistry is important to my best players. I'm probably keeping a lot of these guys. If there's anyone, maybe I move off of a fringe player. That can work. But with that said, Oklahoma City doesn't necessarily need to worry about draft picks. If anything, they probably want to trade out and kick the can down the road. So if I'm the Knicks and I really like a player towards the top of the second round, I'm giving Oklahoma City a call. Why am I doing that? Well, I believe that the Knicks and the Thunder, and this would include the Supersonics as well, have made 11 trades in their histories as franchises. 6 of them, last I checked, have come in the last 5.5 years when Leon Rose took over. So the Knicks and the Thunder are very tight. Sam Presti, Brock Aller speak the same love language of the NBA. It would not shock me in the slightest if they said, hey, let's do this again. And if I'm the Knicks, I can't trade cash this year because I've traded all of my cash to the Hornets to help get Karl-Anthony Towns in a 3-team deal. I could theoretically trade next year's cash to the Thunder in the new league year. That would hard cap me at the second apron. Thunder walk away with more money. Great, but it's also not necessarily the most seamless. I think another thing could be is if I'm the Knicks, I pretty much trade into 44 using not the Wizards seconds, but a couple of other seconds, maybe draft rights to a player. And then I have 44 and 50. And then I try to use 44 and 50 to move up. Is there a team in the 30s that's interested in 44 and 50? Is there a team like the Pistons, for example? Do they need to fill out some of their roster with minimum guys, and they'll take 2 rookies? They don't have a first-round pick because it's with Minnesota, because the Knicks traded that pick that they owned to Minnesota for Karl-Anthony Towns. Brooklyn's got a lot of picks. I mean, they have several first-round picks. Do they also want the 36th pick in the draft? Finding little ways for the Knicks to move up. Otherwise, I can understand why they would stay at 50, but the Knicks never really have a boring draft, so I'm not going to anticipate that they stay at 50. I think that they should move up, because why not? If you're moving up in the second round, you're trading assets that aren't current, most likely. And also the money for the rookie exception is going to theoretically be the same for the 31st pick as it would be for the 59th pick, because that's just how the rookie exception works. You can give a player a raise. The 31st pick can make more than the standard minimum, which I think is around $1.3 million this year. You can give them more, or you give them that bare bones amount. So I'd like to see the Knicks do that as for their overall need. Talent, best player available, find the best player. They're not going to see any time on the court anyway. There are too many players ahead of them. So just find the best player that you think 2-3 years from now sets your team up for the best success, while also configuring how they fit with some of your better players now. You don't want to take someone necessarily who's just flat out a terrible fit with what you do. I liked the Kevin McCullough pick just because it's basically hey, this guy's hurt, but we like our chances when he's healthy. Take that risk. It's a second round pick. You want high reward wherever you can get it. You're not going to expect much from a mid to late second round pick. If you can get something for it, great. If R.L. Huckporty turns into a rotation player, that is more than a double. That's triple. Jericho Sims alone, to me, that's a double. Getting a rotation player, that's good for the 57th pick overall. That you've done your homework. You've done a great job with that. So just find best player available, but think about fit just a little bit. If you're not going to get a high ceiling player, getting at the very least a player who you feel can be an NBA caliber guy, because then if you needed to include him in a trade, the Knicks have done a nice job of hitting singles and using those singles with other assets to then get other players that really help them. So maybe that was just a lot of word vomit to say, I hope that they move up because it's exciting and fun, and that they should get good talent in the door. But that's what it is. So thanks, Darren. I hope that answered your question. Probably didn't, but I did my best. Let's see. Daniel I. Regarding cap or no cap 2.0, is Sam Merrill truly realistic on a taxpayer mid-level exception? He's an accurate, high-volume shooter and grades out very well in screen navigation. Seems like a solid fit for the Knicks. I think a lot of this depends on two things. Number one, Cleveland Cavaliers. How much are they comfortable paying Sam Merrill? If I'm Cleveland, I'm looking at the NBA in the same way that the Knicks are looking at the NBA. The Boston Celtics are without Jason Tatum. The Milwaukee Bucks are without Damian Lillard. The Indiana Pacers are without Tyrese Halliburton. There aren't a lot of elite teams next season. So why not run it back? We're going to be above the second apron probably anyway. So we might as well just pay. This is our year. We're saying this is our opportunity to go all in and capitalize. Does it mean if you spend the most money that you are going to win a championship? It doesn't. The teams that went over the second apron this year, none of them won an NBA title. That doesn't necessarily have to be the barometer. But if you're peaking financially, you're going to hope that it probably correlates with peaking in success. Now, the Wolves made the Western Conference Finals, so that was great by them. But now they have to try to get back there and further with less money. If I'm the Cavs, this is my window. I am exceeding the second apron. I am running it back. I am making trades where I can that don't cause me to be hard capped. And I'm good. Like, that's what I'm doing. But not necessarily going to be an easy thing to price Sam Merrill away if that's their mindset. However, if another team has more money than the taxpayer mid-level exception and says, we want to sign Sam Merrill, then that's that. Sam Merrill has to want to be here. There has to be a role for him. I don't know if he's just taking the most money or if he's saying, where can I see playing time as well? And maybe he has playing time here. Maybe he can get 20 minutes a game and get paid. But if I'm another team, I'm also looking at him and saying, he's 29 years old. He's an elite catch and shoot player. Is there a lot that he can do for me otherwise? You know, am I going to regret paying more than that for a guy who isn't a starter and who may not contribute a whole lot, especially come playoff time? Because I think shooters can get run off the floor often if they can't defend at a high level. Merrill's not a terrible defender, but I don't know if he's able to lock in. I don't know if he's really trusted. So I think he's attainable, but if I'm Cleveland, I would pay to bring the band back, keep them together. But yeah, he would be a solid fit for the Knicks. The other thought is, if I'm the Knicks, do I want to pay that much for shooting? You know, Landry Shamet did give the Knicks some value when he was healthy, and he was on a minimum contract. There's going to be some sort of crunch. There's a lot of talent in the NBA. There are a lot of free agents. I am under the belief that if you are looking to bring someone who's a shooter in, you don't necessarily need to give them the taxpayer mid-level exception. You can probably find similar value with someone on a minimum contract. If you have the space and the means to do it, great. If the difference between signing Sam Merrill were to be were to be using using the taxpayer mid-level or not, use it if you have the ability to do it. But also, it's not my money, and you can find similar value from spot up shooters without having to spend that much. So doable, I believe so. Maybe the Cavs surprise us, but I don't know if you necessarily need to use the taxpayer mid-level exception on someone like Sam Merrill. An option, but maybe not the option. Jason M. Jeremy, check Shams' news about Gafford's extension. How does this affect Mitch's potential extension and the dominoes that follow? Thank you, Mark, for being on the ones and twos for this pod. Posting, as I have not seen, that the Dallas Mavericks center, Daniel Gafford, intends to sign a 3-year contract extension worth nearly $60 million. The new deal runs through 2028 to 2029. Let's see if there's anything else that Twitter decides to talk about. Of course, my phone can't just lock in. It needs me to type in the password. Great. So, Mark Stein, who of course is the Mavericks not beat writer, but the closest to the Mavericks, is saying it's worth $54 million. So I would gather that the $6 million is in bonuses. So with that in mind, let's do some quick math here. And I'm going to use a spreadsheet to help me. So if he is earning 3 years and $54 million, assuming an 8% increase, and we don't have any of these numbers, so we're just kind of riffing here. Assuming an 8% increase of a 3-year deal worth $54 million, not including these bonuses, the starting salary would be $16.7 million. Then it would be 18, and then it would be 19.3. So how does that impact Mitch? We also saw Steven Adams. He received a 3-year, $39 million contract. Interestingly enough about that deal is it was descending. So if I'm the Knicks, I'm looking closer to Steven Adams probably than I am to Daniel Gafford. A big reason for why that would probably be the injury factor. Now, I know Gafford missed significant time this past season, but keep in mind, just looking back, yes, he missed significant time, but he also played in 57 out of 82 games. Last year, he played the year before, played 74 out of 80. The year before that, 78 out of 82. The year before that, 72 out of 82. 54 out of 72, 43 out of 65. That's a healthy player. That's someone who shows up, who's 27 years old. He defended at a higher level this past season with some of the analytics that I saw. I think Basketball Index pointed out that he was one of the top 5 rim protectors in the NBA. If I'm the Knicks, I think you definitely give Mitchell Robinson a descending contract once again. And I would probably, the average contract of 3 years, $54 million would be $18 million. I think it's fair to say that Mitchell Robinson's annual contract is probably in the $16 million range, not including, including bonuses, like when it's all said and done. I'd feel most comfortable giving Mitch a descending deal where he's earning $15 million or so. But it points to the value of centers and rim protectors around the league. Also interesting, where are the Mavericks going to keep running him and Lively out there together? Are they going to move Lively? Probably not, but stranger things have happened. They've upgraded in other ways. They've done, let's just say, perplexing moves in the past. So maybe they do, but when it comes to Mitch, another thing that's worth noting is if you were to say, okay, the Knicks let's look at Mitchell Robinson as a trade asset instead of as a player that the Knicks keep. Then the prevailing thought is that is another center in Daniel Gafford who is off the board. And if that's another center who's off the board, then the market to getting another center, if you're a team that's looking for rim protection, that's looking for a rim runner like Mitchell Robinson, the market is now shrinking one by one. The Steven Adams sweepstakes, whether it was a free agent signing or a sign and trade, gone. Daniel Gafford, he was on an expiring contract, gone. So in theory, if I'm the Knicks, I'm looking at this and I have to weigh the opportunity where there is a market for really great defensive centers and the supply is decreasing and demand is largely staying the same. And that is a value proposition. So that's how I would imagine still Mitch earns around an average of $16 million. Like I said, I would give him a descending contract because of the injury factor. I think it's fair, especially when Steven Adams received a descending contract as well. But do I feel better about the Knicks' odds of keeping Mitchell Robinson? Not really. Do I feel worse? Also, probably not. I just think that when you're looking at expendable pieces on this roster, he is the most expendable. It doesn't mean that they will trade him. Of course, the moment I say that they won't trade him, they will do it because I've been saying that it makes sense to trade him for years. So if I say, yeah, they won't trade him, I think that would be someone like Robert Cross's worst nightmare. So I'll just keep saying that he makes the most sense to be traded of the Knicks, given the salary, given the positioning. There's also the James Najee portion of it all. That's something I want to touch on really quickly. James Najee, who was acquired in the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, 31st pick in the 2024 NBA draft. There was talk of him coming over to the NBA. And what could that mean? Well, it could be summer league, and then he goes back to Europe. But it seemed like that was a little unlikely. So where do we stand? Well, there are two options now. Number one is he could sign a two-way contract. If he signed a two-way contract, then the Knicks have depth where they don't have to use one of their 15 or 14 or so roster spots on James Najee. They are able to bring him up whenever they need. They also don't have to start any clock. The problem with signing him with a two-way is if you're thinking, great, sign him to the two-way, get him on the rookie exception, that works. You can't do that. You can't sign a player to a two-way and then to a rookie exception. Their first contract has to be a rookie exception, or that's it. That's why Ariel Hukporti signed to a two-way. The Knicks got him off a two-way. Why did they not sign him to a rookie exception? Because he wasn't eligible, because he was on a two-way. So they signed him to a minimum contract, not a rookie exception minimum, but a standard. We are over the salary cap. We can offer 2 years at a minimum amount for a player who has 0 years of experience in the NBA. That's what they gave him. So if I'm the Knicks, I don't really want to start the timeline of James Najee at the same time as Hukporti. I would rather, if I'm the Knicks, get Najee on a two-way deal. And then in 2026, next summer, that's when I sign him to a minimum contract. And then Ariel Hukporti is eligible for a new deal. That's when I sign him to a smaller, $4 or $5 million contract, something in that ballpark. Of course, depending on how he does this upcoming season. But as we keep moving up the chain, then we get to Mitchell Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns. And the question of, do you start Mitchell Robinson with Karl-Anthony Towns? Do you have him backing up Karl-Anthony Towns? If you do, is he going to see significant time? Is he going to stay healthy for long enough? It just feels like to me, and I will talk about this again on the next Cap or No Cap, which is coming. It feels to me like we are entering an offseason where Mitchell Robinson is getting squeezed from the upper class and the lower class financially. And I mean that as in Karl-Anthony Towns with his big salary and Ariel Hukporti and any other player. I believe it was even mentioned today, the Knicks brought in a player from Auburn. His name escapes me. I don't know it. I apologize. But bringing him as in for a workout. They're bringing in and they're focusing on big men. They can't keep everyone. Maybe Ariel Hukporti gets expendable. Maybe they move him and they have James Najee replace him. That's definitely possible. But we had the conversation earlier about Nickeil Alexander-Walker and players of that archetype. And I keep going back to, okay, well, if you had a salary to get that type of player, and you do, and you've got a roster crunch perhaps of centers, and you want to be versatile with Karl Anthony Towns, but you also want a rim runner, and you don't necessarily want to pay the next guy, or you don't want to necessarily pay Mitchell Robinson for the next contract, it's a factor. So, Jason, I think if you are someone who looks at Mitchell Robinson as a trade piece, the Daniel Gafford extension helps you. And if you look at that as Mitchell Robinson is someone who's here to stay, then you probably want Mitch to earn a little bit less than the $54 million guaranteed, maybe somewhere in the 45 to 52 million when it's all said and done. But I know that's kind of a large range. So thank you for breaking the news to me, because I had not seen it. Dirty Dancer. I think Sacramento says no, but would you do Hart and Deuce for Monk and Keon? I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't. First off, I understand the one-to-one replacement of Keon to Deuce, but now you have to consider 2026-27, where you basically have to go above the second apron for Keon Ellis. And I just don't think Keon Ellis is good enough to warrant propelling you above the second apron, because Monk's salary is going to be large as well. And then you're going to have to eventually pay Malik Monk again. I mean, Malik Monk signed a contract fairly recently, I believe. He's under contract for this year, next year, and then he has a player option at the age of 29 in 2027. That is tough, considering how the Knicks in 27-28 have a team option for Josh Hart. And knowing how the Knicks operate, if I'm in their shoes, I do not want to be at the mercy of a player option for a rotation piece, not a star. A star, I can probably bet on him opting out or opting in and then signing an extension or whatever it would be. But for someone like Malik Monk, if I'm the Knicks, based on how my contracts are structured, how close I am to the apron, the second one, I don't really want to worry about a Malik Monk player option. I think that I would not have given him a player option. And I think that that's tough. But I don't think Sacramento says yes to this, but I also don't think the Knicks would say yes to this. I like the shot making that you're getting. I like the fact that you're getting a replacement in Deuce in Keon Ellis where there is similar overlap. Absolutely. But that extra year of team control for Deuce, where you're paying him under $5 million versus Keon, who could make 12, 15, however much million, it's a bridge too far for me. So I'd hope Sacramento says no, because I don't think the Knicks should say yes to it. Louisiana Knicks. Hey, do you see the Knicks trading Mikal Bridges? If so, who are the targets? Mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if they were to trade Mikal Bridges, I would imagine it's to trade up for, not in the draft, but for talent like a Jaren Jackson Jr. type. I'm just skeptical that the pick swaps that they have are worth it unless Jaren Jackson Jr. were to say, I want to be in New York and I don't want to go anywhere else. But then Memphis or another team can call his bluff because they know that he can't sign with the Knicks because of cap space not existing next summer and the Knicks not being able to do a first apron maneuver with the sign and trade. Maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. says to the Grizzlies, I'm not staying here. I'm going to the Lakers, or you're trading me to the Knicks. I will tell any team that trades for me that I will walk to Los Angeles. I will do it. They can create enough money, depending on LeBron's situation. It would admittedly be tough, but that's the only way that I'm going to do it. You can either trade me to New York, where I will happily be, or any other team you trade me to, I'll just use the Lakers as leverage and I won't stay there. That's really the only situation I can think of. Is it extreme? Absolutely. But this is C.A.A. we're talking about. I believe he's rep by C.A.A. This is also the fact that the Knicks had Jaren Jackson Sr. in the building. They hired him. That's really the only big move, in him using the leverage that he has to New York's advantage. But other than that, there aren't a lot of players earning Bridges' salary who are a good target. You'd have to use other salary to add up to that. It's not impossible, but there aren't a lot of guys that make sense that I think would work there. So it's not that I don't see them trading Bridges. I would imagine he stays. I would hope that it would be for the extension. I mentioned the OG Anunoby comparison financially, not as in he should earn the same salary, but if I were Bridges and I didn't want to take that extension, why I feel like I have value on the open market. I play every game. I can hit shots. I can do more than I did in this role last year. But ultimately, I don't think that there are a ton of targets for the Knicks. And I would like to see them keep Bridges if they can. Buzzer beater. Jeremy, is the East wide open? Yes, it is. The East is wide open. The East is big, man. The East is big. And by big, I mean not a whole lot of talent, which makes me wonder how teams get creative. A thought occurred to me today with the Miles Turner thought in mind, and the Pacers maybe not paying it. What's stopping a team like the Bucks from doing a sign and trade where it's a 3-team deal where they send Portis to Indiana, Connaughton to a team that has a non-taxpayer mid-level exception that can absorb his $9.4 million. They trade second-round picks, maybe a protected first. They can do that. What's stopping them from saying, hey, Giannis, we used expendable salary to add a good center that Indiana maybe doesn't want to pay because of the Halliburton situation. And by the way, we still have the non-taxpayer mid-level exception to sign a Nickeil Alexander-Walker type. We could use the biannual exception as well, maybe to get a point guard. Maybe we move Kyle Kuzma for something that is lateral in value. Maybe it's like 2 rotation pieces just to fill out the bench. The Bucks can be creative. Teams seeing that this is wide open, if I'm the Pistons, why would I not try to make an upgrade instead of just running it back? Why would I not want to find talent that fits around Cade Cunningham? I absolutely would want to do that. So the Hawks, they're probably going to be around where they're at, but why not try? Why not look to be good? The Magic, they could be a top 4 seed. Absolutely. I still don't quite understand the Bane trade, not because of the trade they did, but because they still don't have a 1A guy, in my opinion, on that roster. I don't fault them for going and doing what they did for Bane. It's just a little perplexing when you consider their top end talent isn't quite there for me, unless Franz or Paolo takes such a leap. But that would be tough. So yes, buzzer beater, the East is wide open. And that's exactly why, if I'm the Knicks, I don't rest on my laurels of we made the Eastern Conference Finals, let's run it back and just have a new coach. I do everything in my power to get better as a franchise. If you believe that this is the Knicks' best year to win a championship, because you never know what could happen, you can only look at what's in front of you. If this is the best year and they still haven't used their get out of jail free card with this going above the second apron, go for it. Do it. If you can use the remaining, not a lot, but the remaining assets you have to assert yourself as the number 1 seed, do it. And the way I see it, no Knicks fan is going to say this is why we play. But the Knicks also have an opportunity to do something that they have not done in a very long time, which is win a division. And that means something. It's not the banner that Knicks fans are going to want to hang, but it would be nice to see something go up there before presumably Carmelo Anthony's number is retired. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happened when his son is a rookie in the NBA. But adding something, doing the best you can do to be the best version of yourself when the East is indeed wide open, you'd be silly not to do that. So I am all for the Knicks pushing their chips in further and further because there's no time like the present. And the present looks good, assuming everyone, or at least the team in general, can stay healthy. Kevin Danishevsky, where are you on the Kennard rumors? I went into the offseason feeling like Luke Kennard's probably going to earn more than the taxpayer mid-level exception. I think his market probably drops a bit from there. So if I could do it over again, I'd probably have him closer to making taxpayer mid-level exception money. I like him. I do. Don't get me wrong. It goes back to, can you use the money available to you in another way? He's a great shooter, an elite shooter. He can handle a little bit. I just wonder, do you need to spend a lot of money on a shooter who's probably going to be your 10th man? And maybe Kennard isn't, but also let's look at this roster. Kennard wouldn't be starting here. So you've got, let's just say, the starting five without moving a finger in terms of trading any player. Or let's say you've got your top seven, right? That top seven of Brunson, Bridges, Hart, Anunoby, Towns, McBride, and Robinson. You've got the seven guys. You presumably have Kolek. That's number 8. And then the question is Kennard number 9? Or are you featuring Dadier? Are you bringing in someone else? Are you trading Mitchell Robinson in this case, having Huck Porty play more minutes, and now you're running a 10-man rotation? What are you doing to emphasize this? I just wonder if the value you're getting out of Kennard, or really that role in general, if it's going to be get a shooter, if you just look to do it at a more cost-effective spot. And if that's Kennard, amazing. You have knocked it out of the park by getting that guy on such a low salary. But I don't think you get him for that low. His market would really have to crater. I like the player. I like the fit overall, but then it's a minutes crunch. Usually these things work themselves out. But I suspect that I just would be surprised if they went with Kennard. I don't know why. It's a gut feeling. I just don't think they have shooting as a premium when you don't do a lot of other things than that. Yes, there is some of the ball handling I mentioned, but I think you can get similar talent for less without hard capping yourself as well. So to answer your question, Kevin, that's what I think of the Kennard rumors. Kurt Valenti, I want a point guard off the bench who can come in, play the point, move Brunson to an off guard. Brunson can get a little break, just score. Lonzo, CP3, who else in that role? I think that a lot of those guards that you're looking for, if you're not trading for them, which Lonzo you'd have to, who also isn't going to be more of an on-ball guard, they're probably bad defenders. And then you've got Brunson and that defender together. I get it. And perhaps the Knicks find more playmaking. Chris Paul would be an option, of course. He'd also be 40 years old. I can understand why you would bring him into the building. I wouldn't be completely against it. I just wouldn't necessarily be in favor of it. I think a lot of the playmaking that can happen is just being more creative with the plays that you're running, doing more pick and rolls, inverted pick and rolls, doing more with Cat, funneling him the ball more and creating in different ways. it doesn't just have to be a point guard orchestrating the offense. It can be a little bit more than that. Getting Brunson freed up so that he can, yes, play off ball, I should say. I completely agree with that. I'd love to see that too, but I don't know if it necessarily means having to bring in another guard. You could have the solutions be in-house. It's just how the workarounds go about, where you don't need to get that free agent. You don't necessarily need to trade for that player. It'd be nice, but if the Knicks got Dante DiVincenzo back, I wouldn't expect him to start running a ton of plays. You can do some things with him, but a lot of it is the spotting up. Maybe there's some pick and roll action, but I don't think it's a ton. You can do it without having to get this free agent. But I hear you. I get it. Thank you for the question. Terrence Popovich. Do you think the Knicks should give this roster one more chance before they make any major changes to the core? Unless they're presented with a big, groundbreaking, earth-shattering move that they can't say no to, it'd be unfair to say they're stuck with it, but they're probably living with it. I don't know how many other options they would have in this case. I wouldn't, unless the opportunity fell into their lap. I think they're much better positioned for success with breaking up this core the following year, when they'd have access to their 2033 pick, and where after the 2026 draft, they could basically say, we can give you the draft rights to the player that we've selected that whatever team traded for likely would have had a say in. We can also give you the 2033 unprotected pick. We can give you second round picks that probably in 2031, 32, or 33 could amount to something pretty good. We can give you swap rights in 2030 or 2032. There are options. So I'd say yes, give it one more chance, partially because you don't have a significant choice, partially because there's more experimenting that can be done here. I think based on the firing of Tibbs, the Knicks are saying, and we'll see what this summer indicates, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks said, no, we believe in the players that are here. We liked a lot of what we did last season with Tibbs. There's more that we can do. We know what works. We know what doesn't. Let's find avenues to enhance those strengths and mitigate those weaknesses. And let's try to do it with a lot of the players that we already have here. And if the Knicks make trades, they make trades. But I don't think there's going to be anything that breaks up this roster so significantly that the core is majorly changing. So that's my guess. And with that, I thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate those also who were at FanFest. Had an incredible time at FanFest. Thanks to Fanatics. Met some fans of the pod as well who were kind enough to introduce themselves and express what they enjoy about being a Knicks fan. So really grateful for that. Really grateful to be able to be in that opportunity. Just really cool. So we got the draft coming up. We've got some coverage and interviews. I will be on Cats and Shoot. I don't know if that was supposed to be a secret, but I'm going to plug it anyway with Fred Katz. So I'll be doing that. Probably wasn't. Also, you should be listening to Fred's pods. Anyway, he does great work and writes great articles. And what else do we have? There will be another Cap or No Cap before free agency starts. I'm sure we'll be doing a live stream at some point. And yeah, well, we'll see what draft night has. But thank you all. And the last thing I'll say is Tuesday, June 24th, if you live in New York City, is Election Day. If you have not exercised your right to vote, go forth and do it if you can. I have not voted yet. I look forward to voting tomorrow. Hopefully others can withstand the heat because it's supposed to be 100 degrees. If you're busy like me, you don't get to early vote, which I'm going to regret. I'm really going to regret tomorrow, but we'll have fun in line. So, all right, everyone, stay safe, stay cool. See you soon.